Hey, it's Mapleton Monthly Minute for the months of June and July. Got a couple of big topics to put before you. In June, at our meeting in June, we did ratify the general plan. As you remember, we've been going through a general plan revision over the last number of months, and that has now been ratified. So if you want to take a look at what that looks like, if you haven't already, you can look at the link in the post here and check that out on our city website. It was mentioned at that meeting also, watch your newsletter for the update on garbage. Your garbage day may change. So don't take my word on that, but watch the newsletter. Don't be surprised if you might see a change in that. The big topic of the day right now is Municipal Internet. I mentioned this back in, I think it was February. That feasibility study for Municipal Internet has been completed. So there's a lot of questions around this, and I want to give you an update of where we're at in that process and what is next. So a feasibility study was done over the last few months. We have that. It's the link also is in the post. Take a look at what that study, the information that study shows us. And what that essentially looks like is Mapleton would run their own internet, their own fiber internet, potentially, not unlike Spanish Fork, the Spanish Fork network. Although we're looking at just the internet service, not phone and cable. Now, why would we do this? There are two main questions that have been brought up, and you may pose these two questions yourself. One is, why is the city getting involved in a utility business or in something that the private sector can take care of? And the other question is a concern about the bond. Why would we want to increase our costs? So I want to briefly address both of those questions. When we look at our city budget, and I mentioned this all last year during the campaign for city council, we have a very limited budget. It's a $6 million annual budget. It's very important that we expand our tax base to offset the costs to you and I as residents. How can we offset that to a commercial venture within our city? Whether it's a grocery store, of course, we have the Maverick. Those are great things. Municipal Internet comes with this study. We learned that there's about a 90% gross margin in it. It could be a real viable opportunity to create a revenue stream in our city without vastly changing the landscape of our city. I think there's a real upside to it. It doesn't come without its questions and some caution, and that's what we're exploring. So when we talk about the private sector, let the private sector fill the void. Well, if the private sector could fill the needs of our city, we wouldn't even be talking about Municipal Internet. The private sector has not met the needs of our city as a whole. Now you might say, well, hey, I've got Comcast, I'm just fine. Well, there are many people in our city, pockets throughout our city that have no viable internet. Low speeds, upload speeds, download speeds. So the private sector is not meeting that need. And after repeated attempts to engage some of the big names, the Comcast, the CenturyLink, Centracoms, and so forth, there's very little interest to invest in Mapleton. Their profit margins or their investment does not work for their objectives. And so those steps have been taken multiple times, and the private sector is not interested, as it were, at this point, to fill that void. We have a great opportunity with Spanish Fork as we border their city. They have been very willing to assist and advise through this process as we gather the right information to make the decision. The second question that I have some real caution around, and I share the question if you're asking or expressing concern about the bond. We don't want to take on more debt, and how can we increase our costs? I share the concern. We are currently exploring what those financing options are with our bond advisor at Zions Bank. We don't have those details yet. I am told that there are a few different options that could be explored that would not saddle every resident with the increased cost, unless you're going to use the service. So I want to encourage you to take a look at the feasibility study on this link. Email me your questions. We don't have all of the information to make a decision. We discussed this again last week at our this last Wednesday at our City Council meeting during a public hearing where Uptown Services presented again their survey findings. No decision has been made. No decision will be made without a large amount of public awareness, public input, and so forth. So just know that as we get more details, as we look at those financing options, I will certainly pass it on to you. I am generally supportive of the idea. I am, but I do have some questions in my mind still that I don't feel like I have seen the sufficient information or data to make that decision. So be aware of that. Stay engaged, and if you have any questions, shoot them back on email or in the post, and we can certainly get you those answers. So watch for that. That's coming up. Sewer. So the sewer, we have a little bit more information on the sewer increase. So we've got a great interest rate. Spanish Fork is going to hold the bond for the entire amount of $90 million total. That's the total bond. Our portion is about in the ballpark of about $18 million. And it will be paid for, in part through impact fees, but also the user rate increase. As you've seen, sewer rates are going to increase in September. The sewer increase looks like it will only be about $7 a month, so not quite, just $1 lower than what we thought it might be. But note that by 2024, it will be up around $60 a month. So that sewer cost will increase incrementally over the next few years, the next 4 years. But stay tuned, stay engaged, and so we can watch, see how every step of the way how this progresses with the sewer, but also with the internet. So let me know your questions or concerns, and we'll see you next month.